Well, hello, how are you? My name is Anton Savage, and you are very welcome to Wellness Interrupted, Guilt, Microcultures and the Tech Trap. This, of course, part of VHI's Workplace Health Insights programme, delivering cutting-edge research and insights into health and well-being across corporate Ireland. And it really is cutting-edge research. We've done research carried out by Ipsos BNA, looking at more than 1,000 corporate employees across Ireland, and that has been analysed then by clinical and academic experts. And what we're going to be doing is talking about some of what those results have uncovered, and also talking about the kind of barriers that employees have found when it comes to preventative health in the workplace. The event is about 45 minutes, and as much as possible, we would love to hear from you throughout. So there is a QR code that you can scan, and if you scan that, you'll see that it'll take you to Slido, and we'll have a couple of polls throughout the session. There's also Q&A. So if you use the chat function on Zoom, we'll try to get to as many questions as we possibly can, because we have all the right people here to answer those questions. The panel that joins me this morning is Amy Burke, who is VHI's Chief People and Sustainability Officer, and she's a hugely experienced HR leader. And she has been transforming VHI's people agenda, positively building and shaping colleague priorities. Next, then, we have Dr. Wilby Williamson, and Wilby is VHI's National Healthcare Strategy Lead, leading population health modelling and planning. And on top of that, as if that weren't enough, he's a consultant in physician, sports and exercise medicine and a professor of physiology in Trinity College, Dublin. As we say colloquially, he didn't lick it off the rocks. And then we have Dr. Yu Mei Tan, who is VHI's clinical lead for preventative health, and she has a specific focus on e-health, preventative health and sports medicine, and she's also a member of the Faculty of Sports and Exercise Medicine. So if you have any questions, these guys are the perfect ones to answer them. And I suppose the obvious one to begin with, and will be, let me lob this in your direction, is when we are talking preventative health, it means a lot of things to a lot of people. In the expert view, what is it?
Well, from the expert point of view, we're really talking about trying to prevent illness, injury, disease, but you've kind of hit the nail on the head a little bit in saying it's very individualized, and it's very shaped by experience and life stage. So, you know, for a young mum, it will mean something different to maybe somebody that's going through or transitioning, you know, retirement, or one of our elders. So prevention means something different. In the kind of lay sense or the public sense, it kind of indexes quite heavily into lifestyle, and you're thinking about modifiable behaviours. In a medical sense, it's a little bit more than that. We're trying to think about screening, early prevention, family history, and maybe the harder end of stuff in terms of like trying to prevent heart disease and diabetes and those types of things.
And it's also, of course, one of those things where there is it's sort of like mom and apple pie. Everybody knows we should, whether or not we do. Some of the research, 83% of the people that Ipsos talked to said that taking small steps now to prevent bigger ones succeeds in preventing bigger problems in the future. But when you then drill into it and ask, well, what do people actually do? 61% of employees say they eat healthily, which means, of course, 40% say they don't. And of the 60%, only 44% say they do it regularly. So what we'd like to do is get a sense of your experience so that we can incorporate that into the discussion. The first Slido poll that we have asked the question, is preventative health on your agenda? And you can see there's a couple of different options. Yes, we're all over it. Yes, we're looking to learn more. No, it's the individual's responsibility. No, but I'm eager to understand more, and undecided. So if you have a chance to fill in the Slido poll, we would very much appreciate it, because it'll give us a sense of what the reaction is to the people who are currently viewing. May, let me begin with where we'll be left off. The advantage to preventative health in a workplace setting is what?
Oh, it's important. Thomas Fuller said that, health is not valued till sickness comes. So now you know why preventative health is so important. And in theory, we should have actually embedded and practiced it at an earlier stage of life. So if employees are struggling with their overall general well-being, obviously the impact will be the lead to decreased concentration. And hence, at workplace, you're going to see increase in absenteeism and presenteeism at workplace. So that's the reason why it is so important that we take this seriously.
What do you see obviously in your professional life, you will have to deal with the consequences of that. Can you give us a sense of the kind of things that you see?
So, for example, I came across a patient who's actually physically, I would call burnout. Now, silently sick, fatigue, can't sleep, can't switch off. So what happens here is crucially important. So it's not just the physical health that's been impacted, the mental health is also impacted. So this is actually quite serious. It takes her 3 days to literally settle down, and obviously, prioritizing rest in order for her to be, herself back again. So,
and presumably, Amy, that's a particular it's a particular issue in a context where the lines between home life and work life are blurring more and more for people.
100%. I mean, even pre-COVID, the work day was no longer 9 to 5, but post what was a shift in the way we work, it's even more blended. So you have to be very deliberate about your work schedule. And, going back to what Wilby said, your health is personalized, but so too is your work. We all have different ways. Some are very orientated towards shifts, others have greater flexibility. So how we as employers structure that support is really, really important, and how we prioritize it and build it into organizational culture. So I would say that most employers now are thinking about it actively. They're thinking about it in a way that it's not passive. It's not saying, well, you own your own health. It's actually saying we can support you because we as an employer want you to be at your best. And in order for all of us to be at our best, health is a huge part of that, and preventative interventions allow you to be healthy. So I think for us as an organization and being able to serve our members or our customers, having the healthiest of colleagues is a huge priority, and therefore we need to be really deliberate in what we do around that.
Well, I think we're getting the sort of the sense of what the guys watching are coming back and saying. So we asked, is preventative health on your agenda? The results thus far, and they're pretty much almost all in at this stage, no, but I'm eager to understand more is about 20%, so 22%, about a fifth of people saying that. Yes, we're all over it, 30%, so roughly a third. And yes, but we're looking to learn more, 48%, so about half. But that's interesting, that thing of as many as 1 in 5 would say, no, it's not something that's central to the corporate agenda. Done well will be. Best practice is what?
So I think one of the things, if we're thinking about 1 in 5 are kind of eager to understand more, it's about learning about that space, learning about the role of work, and I think that importance both at the individual level and then really at the societal level. We've got escalating rates of mental health, escalating rates of modifiable disease, like things like obesity and diabetes. And how does work help to shape the experience? It provides meaning, purpose, social connection, addresses our loneliness kind of epidemic as such, and so important in terms of our focus around mental health. And in terms of trying to do it best, it's about, thinking about the individuals, thinking about the groups within your workspace. So the young people, their needs are maybe different to the midlife, and they're different to then the retirement age. And potentially the risk of health and the risk of disease are different. So maybe at one stage it's about optimization, trying to improve, quality of life and improve health. And at the other, maybe it is something harder that we're actually trying to help, maybe recovery, somebody coming back to work or somebody.
And how much of it is a day-to-day behavioural thing, and how much of it is? I mean, do employers have a sense that you almost farm it out? There is your once-a-year checkup, and we've done our job.
I think that's something that's in the modern work environment is something we're going to have to challenge and change. And the beauty is that we can look to be more personal and personalised in how to address that. And I would argue there's, even at the political level, sometimes it's the sense that it's an individual responsibility. It's an individual's fault and it's an individual's behaviour. But actually, maybe we flip it on the other side and say, what's our responsibility as employers? What's our responsibility as line managers to support a more holistic kind of human approach to health?
And what's the best way in doing that, May? Because you want to balance the desire to be supportive without becoming patronising or annoying or adding more pressure by saying you really should be behaving better health-wise.
Well, I think honestly, we need to look at the overall impact. So if this is a pressure that's actually impacting on people, we need to make sure that at the end of the day, the this pressure can lead to something else much more sinister. So, for example, your heart diseases, your stroke, your high blood pressure, mental health, and then obviously I talk about burnout as it is previously. So it is quite a good balance, having you yourself to contribute, and on the same time, so it has helped from the employer to go through this journey. And that's supposed that we will make a huge impact on our lives.
Amy, the steps that employers can take, the sort of recommendations that you would make?
I think the first thing is making a very specific decision that it's a place you want to play in for your colleagues. So designing and co-creating, going back to what others have said, it is...
Why? Because a lot of employers think that's the personal responsibility of
absolutely.
the employee.
And a huge amount of it is our own responsibility. So we can set an environment, but at the end of the day, it's a two-way street. You have got to give and we have got to create. So co-creation, I think, is really important and being deliberate about it. I think holistic, will be talked about societal impact. If you're employing small or big groups of people, you can have an impact on society. So that's really important. But it's not passive. It is really active in your design. So, a Monday lunchtime yoga class is not the answer. That you sort of, it's bells and whistles. It is about thinking through your organizational culture. What are the microcultures that we can lead? So are leaders seeing to look after their health? Because we cast a significant shadow across an organization by leading by example. Are we somebody that makes sure we inquire about health, inquire about well-being, inquire about how you are doing? That simple question is really important. Giving people space. Making sure that if you get up to go to a gym class in the middle of the day, it's not shunned upon, it's actually admired and it's recognized as looking after your well-being. Same in the evenings. And how we engage in people. The culture that we set around, it is important you are well, and that is important for us as an organisation, it's important for our customers, and it's important for society.
I wonder as well, is there a sort of a sense that it is the responsibility of large, wealthy organisations rather than the sort of the SME, that once you reach a certain scale, you buy the gym and you have wellness programmes, and if you're not of that scale, well, you don't really have to worry about it?
I mean, I think it may be perceived as easier because you're bigger and you can do things at scale. But if you're in a small organisation, whether it's 10 or 15 people, you can easily engage, probably put your arms around the whole thing and say, how are we all doing? Mm-hmm. Is everybody engaging in good sleep, good nutrition, engaging with screening? What are the things that you can have a conversation with at a monthly team meeting? So I think you can choose how you engage depending on your size and scale of an organisation.
Well, it's interesting. You raised that thing of the availability of programs, but maybe not the culture to actually engage with them. That leads us to our second poll, which is we're asking, do you feel that your workplace supports employees in prioritising their well-being? So not just do you think that you have a medical program or a health and well-being program, but is the culture there to support it? So it's pretty binary. It's a yes or a no, or you can be unsure if you really want to. So do you think your workplace supports employees in prioritising their well-being? Now, to expand on this, this is that sense of, I assume, there are programs there available to me. I can do the yoga class if I want, but the unspoken pressure is that people will look askance that I've left the desk.
Yeah, and I think that's a major challenge. And that challenge is, I'm thinking back to when I was doing health promotion and working in the city, and being present at the desk was associated with productivity, and that's not what's borne out in the stats. The more flexible environments, that look at quality, perform better. So how do you look at that? It's like, can you allow more flexibility, allow people to take the options, attend the class at lunchtime, or more importantly, in my perspective, from the medical sense, attend their appointments or attend to the screening programs? That's still a major challenge that we have, in that 40 to 60 age group, as people are pressured by time to seek support and seek help. And so flexibility and hours and structures, but also then thinking about those kind of social determinants of health and how does the workplace shape somebody's health. So like food choices, active transport. Does the workspace have a shower so somebody can cycle into work? So simple things like that.
When you say social determinants of health, does that mean the sort of culture that applies generally? As in, if everybody's ordering chips and burgers for lunch, why are you eating the fruit?
Things that are impacting us all at a societal level and at an organizational level. So what is it that's outside our control but might be within the control of an employer? That's something
that's because that goes to, in a way, to sort of Amy's point of the leadership example that is set. It isn't the tokenism of we have a program. It's we've inculcated this into the way we are as people and as an organization.
Yeah, and then also, like you mentioned, from SME to large organization, there is an incentive to this because you're wanting to attract and retain your staff, and you're wanting a healthy workforce. Again, the evidence supports that a healthy workforce delivers better, has more, is associated with growth, is associated with productivity. But the challenge is that you have to come back and then think of that at the human level, and how do you meet the needs of then a group? So even if there's only 40 employees, there's going to be subgroups within that, the older employee, the younger employee. And it's different really for that 18-year-old apprentice who's maybe got a lot more learning to do. And so how can you support them?
And I suppose, May, that links to your point. It isn't of necessity an altruistic thing. There is a commercial drive as well, because if you're cutting down on presenteeism, if you're cutting down on absenteeism, all of those things, you are gaining from it commercially as well as the health of the employee.
Yeah, completely. Like what Amy and Will say, it's all down to, combination of both your own self and also what your company can help you achieve that.
Well, it's interesting because I mentioned the Ipsos research that we did. So 1,000 employees asked more or less this question: do you think that your employer supports or has a culture that supports engaging in preventative health? Only 37% of those polls said that they felt that was the workplace culture, and about a third said that on-site wellness activities like meditation or yoga classes may be available to them. They felt that they would appear less committed if they actually used them during the working day. And we have the Slido results coming in from those watching currently. Do you feel that your workplace supports employees in prioritising the workplace well-being? About 50% saying yes, unsure about 10%, but 41% saying no. So, Amy, that's that at the heart of it. It is that thing of, we have the programs, but is there actually the support to say we care about this? Not necessarily.
Yeah, and I mean, that's slightly disappointing when you think of sort of 50-50 yes and no, but to a large degree, Anton, the programs are the easier thing to provide because most organisations outsource that because it's where the expertise is. But what the harder thing is to build it into your DNA, to build it into the behaviours and the conversations within our organisation. And that is cultural. And that is about us as an organisation being seen as this is super important. And it goes back to it's important for everyone. Attracting talent, retaining talent, providing great service. So you can have the policies, you can have the programs, but if you don't build it around education, communication, inclusivity, inspiring, then it's a real challenge to get people to participate. So we're very lucky in VHI where we have sponsorship associated with whether it's Park Run or VHI Mini Marathon. You can promote that. You can create a real sense of spirit and engagement and connectivity and belonging to something that has a well-being impact. But most organisations can find a hook. You can find something that says, actually, this is how we're going to create an environment where your well-being is as important as your productivity. They're hugely linked.
And the critical thing is that it is a hook for something bigger, rather than that it's a be-all and end-all of itself. Well, we tick that box, there it is, done.
No, because the reality is, no matter what we do, if our colleagues don't engage with it, it's a waste of investment, which is very precious dollars for organisations. So you have to inspire. You have to get people to see the why, to see the long-term preventative to your future. Will I be able to run up a mountain as a granny or a granddad? Will I be able to play with my children? Will I be able to make sure that I am the best version of me at work and at home? Doesn't matter where you are. So I think education is a key. The why is a key, and then people will engage. You'll naturally engage as a human.
What then will be if this is being done well, what about the natural recalcitrance of individuals? You have somebody who is engaged in all the preventative health programs while busily being a smoker at the same time. How do you make sure that you're not becoming a corporate annoyance to your own employees by telling them what they already know?
I think, that's really important. It's important, both as an employee or employer and as a medic, you're not being paternalistic, telling people what to do. And I think of the young people that I'd be seeing, and young in my books, anyone under 70 really, but thinking of the 40, 50-year-olds that I'd be seeing in my hypertension clinics and heart health clinics. And often the first thing that's presented is you're not going to be talking to me about the smoking, are you? And the thing is that we have options. There's lots of different things that we can be talking about. There's lots of things in our arsenal as such to promote health and to reduce the risk. And if that's something that's presenting as that a barrier at the start, I'm not going to engage with that. But what about his activity? What about monitoring his blood pressure, treating his blood pressure, things like that? So the point there is meeting people where they are and meeting people in terms of a sense of readiness. And where does the workspace come into that? It comes back to the points that Amy's making in terms of creating awareness, creating opportunity, inviting the discussions, because these are slightly abstract concepts. And there is the starting place of guilt, that it's that individual behavior, individual responsibility. And actually for us all as a society, we have to kind of think about a little bit differently for that.
The other thing, of course, is there is a sense, particularly if you look at the kind of the breakdown in demographics that you're describing, that there is a fair degree of corporate effort required to do it properly, which raises the area of whether or not that can be made easier with tech. And one of the things that we're asking, and again, if you'd be willing to give us your view, we'd greatly appreciate it. We're asking whether or not digital tools are supporting or hindering employee well-being. So do you think that digital tools are either supporting or hindering employee well-being? And the other option, of course, is it could be both. On that front, May, the digital tools, I suppose one of the things is, even if you look at how we're hosting this event, the fact of the Zoom online, so many people now will work from home either a lot of the time or wholly. Does that make it more challenging for an employer if you don't have physical control of the environment the person is working in?
Well, it all down to, what you present with. So for example, if somebody is need to relax or de-stress, perhaps a wellness app, yoga, virtual, that will do for certain people. But we're all very different. And also the amount of presentation. So if you're extremely stressed, burnout, you're not going to be able to focus. You're not going to be able to have the time to actually log in. And digital app doesn't come into your brain straight away, right? So I suppose that having the right kind of apps and also perhaps, on-site presentation or even encouragement or even wellness program, that could do both. It all down to what you signpost your employees to. And also the availability of you having something there as an information, which is the key as well. Because when you have information, you can make the right informed decision about your overall well-being. Like what Amy said, education with information is very powerful. And together with communication, how you promote that event, whether is it a wellness, app or is it a digital platform, it makes a huge difference both ways. So there is no one size fits all. And despite that, tech is not really a silver bullet. We know that for the fact. It's just down to the individual and also how the company cherish, from support from upside, from top to bottom and from side to side. So it's actually important because the more you do something from a leadership point of view, the more your employee will follow, oh my God, my boss is going to this talk, maybe we all should go. And obviously less of a tension, to join in, which is a good idea.
But that's a lot like what Amy was saying. That thing of the tone and commitment at the top
Absolutely.
matters greatly. This is a very interesting area, the area of tech in medicine. There's been a massive investment in e-health and digital health over the last number of years. I remember talking to Joe Schmidt about the Irish rugby team when he was manager, and he described having GPS monitors to check acceleration performance, DEXA scanning the entire team to see muscle levels. I'm not suggesting that is something that would apply in a workplace context, but there are many more tools available now in that area, aren't there?
Yeah, and it's going to continue to grow, and I think that's our opportunity as such. and it's going to help us in terms of that spectrum really that you described there, from the wearable to the new imaging tool, and that's going to increase. The opportunity there is for us to, I use a kind of technical term, is stratify. If we're using wearables, if we're using remote kind of digital access, then people are starting to understand about their heart health or their brain health. And I think about it around pillars, brain, heart, your physical health, emotional health, mental health, digestive health. These are all deep areas, but you can think of them as pillars. And in each of those pillars, there's evolving technology and access to supports. So it's a real exciting opportunity. And then May and I then come in that doctory kind of version is just like, what's the right solution? What's the right scan? What's the right imaging? Those types of things. And
so what sort of stuff do you recommend? Should we all be getting, I won't use a brand name, but a fitness tracker of some kind to check our steps?
So myself, I'm tracking my steps at the minute, but I've went through the technologies, and actually I've went back to the simple step tracker. I've had all the fancy ones that GPS located me and all those types of things. I'm happy out at the minute, just tracking my steps. But that's really individual, and about people going on that journey. I do think it's about life stage. It's an important, and what you might need varies. So older adults, I do encourage to be having their annual checkups and screenings. But young adult, what is your cholesterol? What is your blood pressure? And there are some barriers to that because you have to go and get a blood test. And I think that does increase a little bit with age.
What about Dr. Google and the risk of Munchausen's and hypochondria? People deciding that they have all sorts of massive terminal illnesses because they Google something.
I think that's part of modern life at the minute. It's something that we all experience. And what I recommend is getting a reliable source of information. And you can really think of that in terms of what's the headline, where are you going for your information? So it's not your tabloid really that you want to go to. Maybe you want to go to an institution like RCSI or Trinity and some of their health promotion materials, or the charities. The charities offer really good educational supports. So Irish Cancer Society, Irish Heart Foundation, Diabetes Ireland. So trying to think about are you getting it from your mate down the pub, or are you getting it from your doctor? That's kind of a little bit in those spectrums. So reliable sources of information.
We have the results from the question that we were asking you, which was, do you think digital tools support or hinder employee well-being? This is particularly interesting because in our previous questions, there was some level of uncertainty. In this, there isn't. Nobody is unsure. And nobody thinks that digital tools exclusively hinder employee well-being. What's interesting is that just over a third of people think that they support employee well-being, but 2/3 of people say it's a double-edged sword. They both support and hinder. And I suppose in one of those areas, Amy, the reality of technology in modern life, for things like switching off, when email can chase you around your holidays, your time off, that has a health implication, doesn't it?
Huge. And I think this is where personal discipline is really, really important. So simple things like putting at the bottom of your email, I don't expect a reply immediately. So if I choose to work really early in the morning for my family life, or I choose to work late in the evenings, that I have no expectation of my team or the people around me to do those hours, that I don't have that. I go back to, what is the norm in your organisation? Are you expected to reply instantly? Do you have a culture where people fear if they don't see an email, oh my God? And if you have that, it's just not healthy. Unless you're in an A&E, you can wait until the next day to be able to engage in a conversation. I think holidays are hugely, hugely important. I personally don't take my work phone on holidays. I have a personal phone that somebody in the organisation can contact me if there is an emergency. But we're all indispensable. We all, unless you're a small organisation that is 1 or 2 people, you have people that can cover. And you will be healthier after a break. And being able to switch off is a gift. And I would hope most organisations can give that gift to their colleagues. So again, it's leadership. Again, it's what's expected around you. It's being part of a team. I'll cover for you. You cover for me when I'm on leave. So I think we need to be really disciplined, because mobile phones, iPads, if you want to, 24/7. And a lot of the conversation at the moment is around children's access. Adults are just as addicted. And we need to be really careful in the workplace that it is not seen as something that is hooked into you, because it's not healthy and it's not good for any of us. So I think we as organisations need to be very clear on that and set standards and policies associated with it.
And it strikes me, it seems to be another of those areas, May, where it is easy to have a token policy but not have it a core part of the culture. The amount of times that I get an immediate response from an email saying I'm off, I will reply in 2 days, and I know that the person will then subsequently actually reply in real time. Trying to get that to be a reality, that you take the time off, that there is a break in the evenings. It's very difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, discipline, like what Amy said there. I suppose that it's what you want. If you want to get something done, do it then during your work day, your work time. Then after that, then, you have people to spend time with, your family, your friends. So why not make the full use of that?
I suppose that the other side of it, Wilbur, to some extent is it does also allow for flexibility, because if you have a more flexible workday and you're not locked in the office 9 to 5, as might have been the case 20 years ago, you have the opportunity to say, well, it's still daylight. I can do the bit of external outside exercise rather than waiting to the middle of the night.
Yeah, and like for me personally, it's definitely having that impact, the ability to walk your kids to school, or the ability to be more connected and participate in, say, in active transport. But I think coming back to that digital point is that we have to create that awareness. So maybe it's not the right thing to be setting up your workplace to be in your bedroom, because that's going to impact upon your sleep. You need these kind of zones, kind of separations, and that's actually a new skill that we need to develop as individuals and then also as employers. If our home is now our workplace, how do we separate those boundaries? And that's something that actually we all have to work on, and we all have to learn about.
And again, I suppose that goes as well to your point about demographics, that for some people who might be further on in their careers, who may be wealthier, who have bigger houses, that's an easier task than if there's 5 of you sharing a house and there's only one room available to you.
Yeah, so then how do you then maybe look to decrease the amount of time that maybe you're in that potential space? So maybe that's actually where going into the office becomes a value. Not only is it providing maybe structure to today, but it's really about that social connection. And so trying to think about your week. Sometimes it takes people to step back and reflect upon that, writing a diary or tracking their activity, and then maybe trying to correlate that or match it with an experience. How's their sleep doing? How do they feel physically? Those types of things.
While we're talking tech and digital innovation, is there anything coming down the track that particularly excites you? Are there any programs that you're seeing or technologies you think that's going to be a game changer?
I don't have anything that is game changing, because I probably have the view, Anton, that there is no silver bullet.
Right.
I think it is real blended approach to one's health. So how can you take personal ownership? How can you lean into what society is providing, what medicine is providing, what your organization is providing? And I think it is integrating that into your life, because we see now where we have younger populations want to be in the office more than maybe somebody who likes the flexibility to do their work maybe 2 days a week or 3 days a week at home. And organizations that have the ability to offer that it's fantastic, and it's fantastic for people. So I see it all as a blend as opposed to any one silver bullet. But I love seeing the wearables. I love seeing ownership of data. That's probably the thing that I think will be really interesting at a societal level going forward. It's less about an individual, but looking at data, looking at trends, looking at where preventative intervention is having a real impact. Now, that's always the long game. It's a 5 or 6 year trajectory between action today and 5 years' time, I'm better. So I do believe it's integrated and blended.
But we also presume, we'll be in your own area. We have much more capacity now to interrogate vast quantities of data, to see things like patterns across set demographics or patterns across corporates. We've never had that ability before.
And, obviously, for myself, that's something that I'm really drawn to. and I'm a scientist. I want to evaluate people's risk. But actually, the interesting thing that people come back to me saying is like, well, we're not interested in risk. We're interested in how are we going to live better, or we're going to live, I want to sleep better. And so there's a learning there for myself. It's like, how do I communicate more effectively? How do you put a story or a message around those numbers? And it's maybe being awake to the things that are around us. My dad's in his 80s. He's had significant health issues, and I'm looking at him and going, how do I not go on that journey? And how do I navigate, something that's I'm on, potentially on that similar trajectory. So how do I engage with that? But that really needs empowerment, knowledge, understanding, but also just that it's very personal. So it's not just about the data.
We've been having questions come in, and thank you very much for your questions. And if there are more, fling them into the Zoom chat and we'll get to as many as possible. One saying, I'm in a contact centre environment. They're the most stressed colleagues, in my opinion. They have no access to the type of programmes that we're discussing as a function of the nature of their work. As leaders, what can we do more to embed it into our culture? Close the phone lines for an hour? What are the suggestions? What about that when you're shackled to a job that you can't have that flexibility?
Yeah, and I said this earlier, there are different needs depending on the type of job you have, because some jobs have greater flexibility and others don't. I mean, a contact center environment is one of those environments that you can structure. So you can structure breaks, you can structure, if we're doing a well-being hour, that you can give that manager plenty of notice it's coming up, so then they can make sure it's diaried into the contact center environment. I think making sure people have micro breaks, they're as important as big breaks. So just having that ability to switch off, because some contact center jobs are quite intense. You're having a one-to-one conversation with a customer. You're never going to be able to close down your phone lines, because that is the lifeblood of your organization. Your customers or your members want to speak to you. But it's around, going back to what I said earlier, Anton, prioritizing that those individuals will have better calls and better engagement, which means you'll have a happier customer, which means you'll have a stronger business, if that person is content. We all know we perform better if we're feeling good and we're in a good mood.
So that's almost, that's linked to May's point from earlier on. You sort of think, well, we can't have people take the breaks because they have to be busy in the call centre. Well, if they're taking the breaks through presenteeism or absenteeism, you're getting there in the same result through a more painful way. Wilbur, do you want to chip in on any of that?
I think the word that comes to mind is like when you're training for an event or a marathon, it's periodization. Your rest and your on time. And one of the things from the data is that you can start to look to see intensity. Often we're with the goal is the number of calls and the activity, but actually that may be, to Amy's point, that may be coming at a cost. And we do hear that a lot from those types of occupational environments where it's you're fixed, you have a quota and a number of calls to get through. But actually what we see is if people introduce downtime or vary the intensity of that activity, taking them from, less severe content to lighter content, if you're a content moderator, for example, that has a really positive health impact. So,
another question in, what role should leadership play in modelling healthy behaviours, and how do we ensure consistency across departments? And do you want to jump in on that one, May?
Well, I think, early on I said that you have a good leadership support from top to bottom, bottom to top, and then side by side. And I think that, whatever role we all play, we all should play a role here, not just, the leadership perspective. I think we all should play a role. So if you have that consistency with a good communication, that's not hard. And sometimes even the smallest thing can make a huge impact coming in this aspect. So back to that point of, having a contact center, if you have incentivize your workforce to have a good break, for example, have a good food, salad, healthier option, things like that, and even having a duvet day, things like that could make huge impact, even though they're tiny.
I can hear senior managers gasping at the prospect of a corporate duvet day, but that's a genuine suggestion, that kind of thing of have the scope to take a break.
Yeah, you can win a duvet day. You need to take a day off, and having a duvet day is actually a very good day because it makes you happy, makes you valued as an employee.
And this is a bit like your thing of not just saying not periodicity. What was the correct term?
Periodization.
Periodization.
Yeah.
Sorry,
but also, yes, that sometimes as an individual you might need that downtime. And it's about creating that flexibility. And that word I mentioned before about not being paternalistic, actually, what the evidence shows around those kind of programs where they've trialed duvet days, like there's programs in Australia, North America, they're looking at trying to introduce, say, 6 duvet days a year. That's on top of your vacation. But it promotes autonomy, it promotes individual choice, and actually it leads to improvement in productivity.
And this is literally a day where you can say, I'm not coming in, I'm staying in the scratcher.
Obviously it has to be moderated.
Oh, it's a wonderful concept.
As the chief people officer.
I see you inhaling.
I mean, the reality is what we offer is a well-being day, which is a version of that. So, within your year, we say take a day for your well-being.
But ideally get out of the bed at some point during it.
But it's for your well-being, because it's really interesting. It goes back to the personalisation. So for some people, that might be a duvet day, I don't know. For other people, it's a day where they can actually do a half day of their life admin, because it's catching up with them and it's what's playing on their mind. So for that day that they take, first half day might be my personal admin, second half day might be with family or friends or a hike. So I think it's important that we give people that flexibility to say, what makes you a healthier or better person than you were yesterday by having that day? And it is going to be different for different people. And that's the way it's structured.
And if you use that as an example, say, it's not a one size fits all, but these are just examples that as employers we can go to look at and learn about, and then say, okay, that doesn't fit us, it doesn't fit our model of work, but what can we learn from that? So I guess it's coming back to Amy's point about not being passive. If we want to address this, as employers, we need to be active and proactive in terms of learning, understanding, and then applying that back into our workspace and for our employees' benefit.
And the one thing I would say is this does require investment, Anton. It does require a dollar sign of investment, and it requires resource to create this. But the payback is very significant, because you do have more engaged colleagues, you do have better engagement with your customer and members. So I think that's what we mean by being really deliberate and putting resource behind it.
Interesting question. Again, and thank you on the Zoom question. Should it be embedded into interviews as a question on how the person being interviewed looks after their own well-being? This alone would ensure that we're hiring leaders with well-being at the core.
Yeah, I mean, leadership is a privilege. I always have said this many times. In a position of leadership, people look to you, and therefore your example counts. And therefore, if you are going to hire leaders, you want leaders that are going to demonstrate your values as an organisation, that are going to bring your culture to life. So if you don't create a safe space for people to know, I care about you, I care about your well-being, because that correlates with your performance, well, then you as a leader probably shouldn't be in that position. So I think asking people how they manage their well-being is symptomatic of how disciplined a person is, how much well-being is important to them, and how they take ownership.
Well, that thing of creating a safe space, let me ask a similar question then to May and to Wilby. The advice that you would give to leaders watching now to say, okay, if you do want preventative health and well-being to be something that your organisation really commits to, what would you recommend?
I would recommend to have an overview to start off with. Help us getting to know you, know the whole core issues, and when you know the core issues, it's easier to solve, provide different solutions. So it's all down to problem solving. So if you know exactly what's needed, then it's much easier for anybody or for you to deliver it.
Wilby, final word?
I think it's about getting on the journey, and we talked a lot about education. So raising your own awareness and understanding of the area. And then there's this opportunity about personalisation. So how do you bring that in?
Wilby, May, Amy, thank you all very much. That is pretty much it for us this morning. If there's more information that you want to find out, obviously this is part of Workplace Health Insights, and there is a series of preventative health articles which are available at vhi.ie/employers. That's vhi.ie/employers. Thank you very much for your time, your questions, and for responding to the poll. We hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye.